Howdy, y'all. Today we're continuing our series on Seraphon Strategy as we're going through all the different units in the Seraphon Battle Tome, kind of looking at what they do, how to best utilize them in our army, and what their role is. So today we're looking at the SKINK Starpriest. Now, this guy to me is almost an auto-include in just about every army I build in Seraphon. Let me know if you guys think it's an auto-include in your list. I have found him to be incredibly useful at damage multiplier for a bunch of different units, as well as kind of a utility piece, a support piece for command points and spells and things. So let's get into this. So we're going to look at his war scroll real quick and then talk about what kind of buffs he provides for our army. So our SKINK Starpriest, he is a hero. He's 120 points, and he has 5 wounds on a 5-up save. So he's pretty squishy. This guy is susceptible to be getting shot or mortal wounded off from magic, things like that. So you do have to protect him. He is a support hero. He's kind of the classic, just kill the heroes type of guy. So make sure this guy doesn't get shot early on, because he will go down, and he'll go down pretty fast. If we look at his movement is actually pretty decent. It's 8-inch move, and that's good because that kind of matches a lot of what we're gonna be pairing him up with. A lot of things in our army move 8 inches, and so it's nice that he gets that same movement so he can keep up with everything that we're gonna be supporting with his abilities. He does have a missile weapon, the Venom Bolt. I guess he's spitting venom at things. I'm not sure because he doesn't really have a missile weapon on him anywhere. But it does have 18-inch range, 2 attacks, 3 threes, -1 rend, 1 damage. So it's not bad. It's not enough attacks to really count on it to do anything, but don't forget you have it. Melee weapon, Serpent Staff, 1-inch range, 2 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1 rend, 1 damage. This is never get this guy in combat. He's probably not going to do anything, and if he's in combat, then your army's probably already in trouble. He is the definition of a support hero, not a combat hero. He does have some interesting abilities that is key to his usefulness in our army. His Astral Herald ability, at the start of your hero phase, roll a dice for this model. On a 5-up, you receive 1 command point. And as you know, if you've played Seraphon very much in this last battle tome here, we use a lot of command points. We also have a lot of ways to generate command points, and he is one of them. So at the start of your hero phase, you're probably going to be rolling some dice with your Slon or your Kroak to get command points. You'll also be rolling with your SKINK Starpriest, and on a 5-up, you'll get an extra command point. So you can always use command points, always. And so don't forget to roll that. It is useful. His Serpent Staff, this is really where his worth comes into its own. His Serpent Staff, in your hero phase, you pick 1 friendly Seraphon unit wholly within 12 of this model. If you do so until your next hero phase, if the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with that unit is 6, that attack inflicts 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. And a unit can't benefit from this more than once. So really, this is the ability we're looking for. That Serpent Staff, it's not a prayer, it's not a spell, it's just an ability. It's automatic. So you pick a unit wholly within 12, so you do have to be wary of his range on this ability. But they automatically get this buff, and it's any Seraphon unit. So any unit in the army can take this buff. And it is on the wound roll, which means those mortals aren't going to proc on hits. They're going to proc on those wounds, and it has to be a wound roll of 6. So you got to get through that first gate of the hits to get to the wounds. And so you really need to focus this on things that have a lot of attacks, because you're gonna see it drop off from the hits. And so now you're searching for those wound rolls of 6 to get the mortals. Also, he is a wizard. He's a level 1 wizard, so he gets to cast 1 spell, and he does have a spell called the Blazing Starlight. And you pick an enemy unit, it has a casting value of 6. You pick an enemy unit within 18, and visible to them until your next hero phase, subtract 1 from the hit rolls of attacks made by that unit. So this is pretty good. It makes them -1 to hit, and it's going to be pretty useful for a lot of different things. I find I'm generally not using this spell turn 1 or turn 2 It's usually I'm picking this up a little bit later when I'm trying to outlast something that's maybe stuck in combat. It turns out to be pretty good. So that's kind of the rundown of the War Scroll. Just a Cliff Notes version here. 5 up is extra command point. A unit wholly within 12 gets mortals on a 6 to wound. That's automatic. Remember, this isn't a prayer or spell. This is just automatic. And he's a level 1 wizard. So we're gonna lean into some of those things. First off, is he worth putting a command trait on? He is a hero, and he's going to be in a lot of your lists. I don't think I'm ever going to put a command trait on him. I'm never going to make him my general unless you've just got some kind of wacky list that you're aiming for that just has a bunch of small heroes. If I had to choose one of these, I would probably choose the Master of Star Rituals, just to give him +1 to his casting. He doesn't have any pluses to casting, and he does have some good spells. So if I had to choose one, I'd go with that. But generally, you're going to have a better target for your command traits and somebody else to make your general. Honestly, it's the same for artifacts. I'm really never going to put an artifact on this guy. I generally have better options for my artifacts in the army. If I did, I would probably choose Cloak of Feathers, just to give him a -1 to hit. And that way, in shooting, he'll usually be next to something that will give him Lookout Sir, which is also a -1 to hit. And he could be -2 to hit. If I had to give him one, it would probably be that. But like I said, there's a lot better options for artifacts in our army other than these little support heroes. Let's take a look at his spells real quick. This is the Skink spell lore. And so he has access to all of these spells. And I think a couple of these are worth taking. We're not going to read through them all. The first one just basically gives you some battle shock immunity. That's this one. And I'm not too worried about that generally. And you can always spend a command point. We have a lot of command points. So I can always spend a command point on that. Hand of Glory is one that I end up taking a lot. Hand of Glory, this spell here, I take this a lot on this Skink Starpriest. And when you look at it, it's a casting value of 6. You pick one friendly unit wholly within 18 of the caster, invisible to them until your next hero phase. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by that unit. And so you may be thinking to yourself, well, that's exactly like a command point. You can use this command point for that in the shooting phase. You can use a command point for that in the combat phase. And that's true, but this lasts from your hero phase until your next hero phase. So this is effectively worth 2 command points if you take the next turn. If you don't, it's potentially worth 3. If you're because you would have to spend a command point in shooting and combat, and this takes care of both of those. And especially if you're in like Fangs of Sotek and somebody's charging you, and you get to fire off, then this still is valid. Then you don't have to spend another command point at that point. And so this is quite useful. I take this a lot, and you can put it onto any friendly unit and give them those rerolls. So I really do like Hand of Glory. I take that a lot on my Skink Starpriests. The third one is just kind of you pick some terrain stuff. To be honest, I don't really play with terrain features that much, but this one is another terrain feature spell that you can play with if you're using all the terrain features. Fiery Convocation is actually kind of a fun spell. This number 4 here. It's kind of fun in that you pick a unit, and at the end of each phase, so every phase, hero, shooting, movement, charging, combat, battle shock, you roll a dice, and on a 6 they suffer D3 mortal wounds. So it's only going to happen maybe once or twice, but between the time you cast this and the next time you get to your hero phase, but it could. So if you like the random rolls and random effects, maybe that one's for you. I'm not really taking that too often unless I'm just wanting to have some fun. Number 5 here, this Bind Endless spell is actually a pretty cool little spell here, in that you can bind any endless spell on the table, which makes it from a normal endless spell to a bound keyworded spell. That means only you can control it. So if you have, the absolute perfect list and it comes out 10 points overpriced, you can drop one of your endless spells down to a normal endless spell instead of bound, and then bind it with your Star Priest. Or if you face a lot of endless spells from your opponent, take this one, then you can bind one of their spells to you, and all of a sudden they've paid points for your boundless endless spell. Hey, not bad. And this last one here, number 6, I like this one too. I've taken this a couple times. If you face off against a lot of hordes, Tide of Serpents is a great spell to put on the Skink Priest because it is another option to just blow up hordes. It's your typical pick an enemy unit. If you cast it, then you roll the number of dice for the models in that unit, and 5-ups are mortals. Now, it's hard to cast because it casts on an 8, and the Skink Star Priest doesn't have any native +1s to cast, so it is a little bit more difficult to cast. But if you combine this with the Slans, same thing, the Stellar Tempest for the Slan, which is basically the same spell, has longer range, but if you combine it with that, maybe also throw in there the Bound Purple Sun, and all of a sudden you're going to be deleting hordes left and right. And so this one's kind of a fun one to use. If you face a lot of hordes in your meta, that one's not bad. But my favorite one is Hand of Glory. We're gonna focus on that one because I think it has the most utility, and really it can up the damage of the units that we're going to be supporting in with the Skink Star Priest. So, what units does our Skink Star Priest buff? Well, the short answer is all of them. You know, his keyword is that it works on any Seraphon units, but it is best for high volume attacks because that buff where we're getting mortals on the wounds of 6s, you really want to focus on high volume attacks. And it does work on missile and melee attacks. And so, you know, if you got something that does both, even better. So we do skinks are the obvious answer. You know, we have a horde of skinks, 40 skinks. They're going to have 2 shots each. So that's 80 shots that we're looking at getting through the hit phase into the wound rolls so that we can get those 6s. So the Star Priest really buffs them up well. Without him, they're not really all that scary, to be honest. But with the Star Priest, they're gonna be spitting out some mortals. The Source Knights are kind of the sleeper hit of our book, I think. I'm really liking the Source Knights right now. They do have a lot of attacks each when kitted out properly, and they can put out quite a bit of hurt. Source Warriors also, you know, you have this horde. They've got each of them has 1 attack. They can buff that up to 2 in hordes, and then also they'll have 2 jaw bites in Coalesced, and so you have a horde that has 4 attacks each, which is pretty nice. And you're looking for those high volume attacks to get through to those wound rolls so you can get the mortals. Same with Pterodons, Croxagores, and Thunderquake, where you get extra attacks and extra bites. Razordons, you know, they are not looked at as the best option for our artillery. Actually, they're not keyworded artillery anymore. That's right. But between them and salamanders are by far better. But Razordons are a lot cheaper, and you know you can get some decent buffs onto them with this Skink Star Priest and do some fun stuff. We'll kind of look at that here in a minute. So you're looking for high volume attacks. You don't really ever want to waste a Star Priest on like a Stegodon or a Bastiladon. Maybe you could work on a Bastiladon if you're double firing him. But you're really looking for stuff that has a lot of attacks to get those wound rolls. So I kind of want to look at some of the differences here. You know, if we have 10 Saurus Knights with spears in Coalesce, so we're getting the +1 jaws. In Kotal's Claw, we're getting +1 to hit. On the charge, +1 damage for spears. We talked all about this in our Saurus Knights video. And Scarvet on Carnosaur given the 6s to hit, cause an extra hit. So this is what their damage looks like. You know, 10 of them puts out quite a bit, 21 damage against a 4-up save. This is their average damage, obviously. But if we add the Skink Star Priest into that mix, we give him our 6s on wounds, are an additional mortal, and Hand of Glory reroll 1s to hit. All of a sudden, we're up to 36 wounds from 10 Saurus Knights. So this is all of a sudden, we've increased that damage by 15 on average to a 4-up save. That's a lot. You know, you're going to be putting a lot of hurt down when you're pumping out 36 wounds on a 4-up save. And a lot of those, I think it was about 12 to 15 of those, are mortals that are coming through. And so you're going to be able to do a lot of damage there to those guys. especially when you look at like the 2-up and the 3-up save. If you're facing something with high armor, you're not going to be doing a lot of damage with these guys unless you get those mortals through, and that damage is getting pretty crazy. It's almost triple the damage against a 2-up save just due to those mortals. So you can see the damage potential there of the Star Priest. Same thing happens with the skinks. You know, we're looking at 40 skinks with bolt spitters, 2 attacks each because we got more than 15. Now we're adding the 6s to wound to an extra mortal, and we're getting that reroll 1s from Hand of Glory. Without those buffs from the Skink Star Priest, they're only doing 4 damage at a 4-up save. That's kind of pathetic for 240 points. But once we add on the Skink Star Priest, you know, they're up to 10 damage against a 4-up save. That's a little bit better for some pretty terrible attacks. You can buff that up a little bit more. I think you can add another 5 damage to that if you add in a Skink Priest to give them +1 to their hits. But just the Star Priest on his own more than doubles their damage from the skinks, just the base skinks. So you're looking at this guy. He's a force multiplier for a lot of different units. You can find the breakdown on a lot of these on previous videos in the Seraphon Strategy. You can look in this playlist. There's a lot of them on each of these units. Same thing for warriors. Source warriors, 20 warriors with spears, 2 ranks deep. You know, they're doing 18 damage with all these buffs listed below, and Kotal's Claw with our Old Blood on Carnosaur and Old Scarvet on Carno doing their stuff. It's a decent amount of damage there. Now, we're putting a lot into it, but once we add the Skink Star Priest, going up to 32 damage. So we're almost doubling the damage from those warriors just by adding the Skink Star Priest and his spell. So I think you're seeing the running theme here. This guy is a force multiplier. Even things like the Razor Dawn. So if we're gonna shoot with our Razor Dawns, charge in, which then we get to shoot in the charging phase, and then melee, which is what these guys are real good at, especially in Thunderquake. If you can run these guys in Thunderquake and still charge and then get to shoot twice and do melee, maybe they're worth their points at that point. But without the Star Priest giving them the buff, they're going to do a total of 14 damage against the 4-up save in all 3 of those phases there. And we're almost doubling that with the Star Priest. So that's kind of the running theme here. This Star Priest will add a lot of damage to your different units, and it's all about that serpent staff. If you can pop that staff onto something, now you gotta keep your distances in check, that 12 inches, but he will do a lot to buff up your units. So I end up putting him in a lot of lists. If I'm taking Saurus Knights, he's going in there. If I'm taking Skinks, he's absolutely going in there. If I'm taking Warriors, he's probably going to go in there to help me deal with some high armor enemies. And so that mortal wound output is pretty good. So there we go. Our Skink Star Priest. He's going to help us get some extra command points and do mortals. Put him in lists with a lot of high attack units, a lot of dice being rolled, and he will be productive for you. Plus, yeah, he's got all the feathers. Fun little model to draw. I really do like him. Fun model to paint. So, all right, there's your Skink Star Priest. Put him in your list. Protect him. People are gunning for him. People who've played against Seraphon, they know that he is the key and the cog that keeps our damage output going. Alrighty, guys. We'll see you next time.